Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock, let's go over the market, and let's figure out what is happening to Tesla stock on another pretty decent day and what we can expect moving into, well, the rest of the month, next week, etc. So all that being said and done, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice and I am not a financial advisor. And of course, my membership section on YouTube is live. That link is down below in the description of the video at the very top of it. You can just click that and it will take you over to it. But essentially, you get access to all my intraday thoughts, posts, updates, etc. every single day on Tesla stock for just $2.99 a month. We have a lot of people here as well. We're at like, what, I think 340 members now. A lot of communication, a lot of discussions. You can see some, nice, for instance, hopefully my commentary and TA has proved helpful. And, obviously people seem to be pretty happy about it, right? And it's just a good community. So if you want to join, check it out. That's $2.99 a month for Tesla updates. I have a $4.99 also for NVIDIA included as well, if you're interested. But jumping into it, let's talk about Tesla closing the day up almost 1%, closing at $216 per share, just above, which compared to the market, you can argue is an ever so slight outperformance, with the market being essentially flat. But of course, I do want to make it very clear, the market is at a pretty important level, right? This is a level that, if there's a place to reject for this market after this unbelievable rally, to truly like absolutely unbelievable rally that the bears have been, are there any bears left? Honestly, at this point, it's pretty much right around here for SPY and QQQ, right? These are crucial levels for the market to either really get above to go even higher and probably honestly two new all-time highs, or get a rejection and maybe start a little bit of a cool off. But again, the market is so strong that even if we get a cool off, I can't imagine it's going to be a pretty big one. At a worst case scenario, at least as of right now, I'd imagine a cool off is like 2.5%, maybe 3%. I'd be surprised if we see much more than that, honestly. But regardless, that's kind of the market. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because it can affect Tesla stock. Now, Tesla stock, of course, trading still within a pretty decent range, closing higher than yesterday, still showing some decent signs, right? But before we dive super into the technical analysis on specifically Tesla, I want to talk about, well, probably what you see in the actual title of the video, and that's going to be that dark pool activity, right? Tesla has had about $1 billion, actually probably more than $1 billion in dark pool activity today. Pretty suspicious. Now, if you don't know what dark pool is, you can pause the screen here and you can read it. I asked Grok, obviously know what it is, but in case you want a better explanation, you can pause and read the screen right here, right? It explains here, Grok. But essentially dark pool, very quick TLDR. It's pretty much, happened. It's kind of like if you were to buy and or sell really stock behind the scenes, like in, for instance, Matrix, they have that, behind the Matrix, those like that corridor of doors where it's like no one really knows about it. It's kind of the same idea. It just happens behind the scenes, behind the curtains, right? Where people don't really see, like you can kind of see the orders come in like we see just now, but we have no idea if it's a buy. We have no idea if it's a sell. We have no idea who's doing it or what. And we just have no information other than, hey, that just happened. And the reason I bring this up is because today we've had probably one of the largest amount of dark pools, orders and blocks on Tesla I have seen it in a long time, right? So for instance, down here at pretty much 10 a.m. when Tesla was at 216, which we closed at pretty much right here, right? We had a 300 million order, dark block order, right? Which equated about 1.4 million shares, which is about 1.3% of the volume. That's, that already was like, okay. But then it continued and it got even crazier, right? So for, we had a few small, quote unquote, smaller ones. I use the word small here quite loosely, but 54 million at 217. We had a 174 million at 217.76. And this is probably the biggest one, like not probably, literally the biggest one by far. We had a 755 million dark pool block come in on Tesla stock, which is pretty interesting, right? It came in right here. You can see at 215.77. This right here is very eyebrow raising. Again, we don't know if it's a buy. We don't know if it's a sell. The only thing we can assume is, well, if Tesla doesn't happen to really go below 215.77, it was probably a buy. If it goes below 215.77 and like consistently keeps staying below it, and essentially that 215.77 essentially acts like it was a resistance now, probably a sell. That's the best we can do, unfortunately. And then we had a few more above that, 43 million and 21 million, pretty much at 216.33. So that's concerning. Again, the issue is we don't know if it was a buy or sell, but pretty much almost like about $1 billion in pretty much dark pool orders came in today, which is, that's eyebrow raising to say the least. Don't see that very often on Tesla, not this amount at least. So we'll see what that forms into. I wish I had a better, insight into that, but I don't, unfortunately. Now, moving to the actual technical analysis, right? So Tesla, had a gap down today, and I'm not gonna lie, this first 15-minute candle was pretty ridiculous. I did not expect this. Honestly, when we had this gap down, I actually thought that the small little correction down to about this level around here-ish would start, at the very least, somewhere to around this 206 to 208 range. It clearly didn't. Instead, what happened was we ended up just pushing right through, had a massive bullish engulfing, and then we had a 15-minute order, what is this called again? They call something specific here. Orb breakout, essentially. Pretty much the second 15-minute candle went above the first 15 minutes candle's range. Bam, you have a breakout. You most likely trend up the rest of the day, roughly, right? And we did. Initially, we came up pretty much to 220, almost to perfection, and we rejected, came back down. And this is the part that's important, right? If I go back to the 1 hour chart here, you can see, right? As we came back, on the 1 hour chart, we, exactly almost to perfection, turned this area that yesterday was obviously a resistance, now into support. Plain and simple. It's just sometimes that. It's just that simple sometimes, really, right? Came down, turned that area into support. Great. And we bounced off of it, and now we're kind of just going sideways, potentially making, honestly, what could be a little bit of a bull flag situation here. So we'll see how that plays out on Monday. If this plays out, I do expect Tesla to come up to at least like a little bit more into the 220s, maybe even as high as best case scenario. I think best case scenario is 225. I'll be surprised if we go much higher than 225 before at least some level of rejection, right? And I'll explain why very, very soon. But ultimately, Tesla is still looking pretty solid, right? Again, I want to make it very clear on the daily chart. The daily chart is still looking really good. Why? Well, there's a few reasons. So we'll get the bullish stuff out of the way before I start entering some bearish talk, I guess. The daily chart, right, even though we had some selling pressure come in, you can see about half the candles, the candle's actual wick. So obviously some selling pressure finally really started to kick in here. We're still making higher, well, relative to yesterday, we're closing higher than yesterday, which is, a sign of strength, right? We're above the 21 EMA now, 2 days in a row. That's really good. If we can continue holding above this 21 EMA Monday and like Tuesday, for instance, very good news, at least in my opinion. 21 EMA is just kind of another momentum indicator. Above it's bullish, below it's bearish. That's kind of like a TLDR, really, right? We, of course, are now above the 50-day moving average, also a good sign, right? We're obviously well above the 200-day moving average. We had that golden crossover on the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average a while ago, but nonetheless, still something worth mentioning, right? Right over here, had that little crash, and then we're pretty much rocketing back up. So that's a good sign, right? The market bias, we're pretty much, this is the only, I guess, quote unquote concerning thing on the daily. We're pretty much right in the market bias. So, we definitely want to start getting back above it, kind of like what NVIDIA did, for instance, right here. So that's a good sign from NVIDIA, right? Which is obviously great. My band's regression, obviously we were extremely oversold, came right back up to the middle, right? The median, right? You almost always at some point come back to the median, and we're pretty much right there. Now we're closing even slightly above it, not convincingly above it, but nonetheless above it, which is still a damn good sign. So that's always a nice thing to see. So there are a lot of bullish things setting up on Tesla, right? It's, it's hard to actually look at Tesla here, especially with this breakout out of this downward channel, or, arguably a bull flag, or arguably also, not arguably, literally a cup and handle pattern, right? Remember we talked about this. Remember, if you go back to my videos in early July, I was talking about this cup and handle pattern when we were still around 260. I'm like, you know what? There's a good chance that we rejected 260, and then we start downtrending on a bull flag / handle of the cup and handle, and then we break out. And if we do break out, that'll be very bullish, but we ultimately want to see a 265 break, and that would be extremely bullish. And I think we'll go to all-time highs if that happens. Well, that's exactly what has happened so far, right? You can go back to my videos and even see me calling this out well before it even started happening. Now, the question is, well, what happens next? Well, we broke out of this handle, which is a great sign, right? The MACD on the daily chart is on the verge of flipping bullish. Obviously, it hasn't yet, and there's still a chance it doesn't. So make that very clear. It hasn't, but it's pretty damn close, right? So that's a good sign as well on the daily chart. Once that flips bullish, well, you can see what happens to NVIDIA once it flips bullish. Bam, nice little bullish crossover on NVIDIA. That happened all the way down around, right around this range over here, around 107-ish, and it's at 124. Well, look at that, right? So that's another positive potential catalyst coming up on Tesla. We have the BX trender still making higher lows, still showing the green band, also about to enter green territory. There's a lot of things setting up for Tesla, right? Tesla on the daily chart, in my personal opinion, looks great. Stochastic is still flip bullish, pointing straight up. Like, I don't see a lot of issues here with Tesla on the daily chart. It looks bullish. I genuinely believe it looks pretty darn good for a bullish move higher. But there is a pretty massive however. And this is where we'll start getting into the bearish talk, because I think the bulls have had enough. Honestly, I think they've had enough rewards. Let's just say that, right? Let's talk about some bearish talk, because the bears need at least anything they can get right now. Let's be honest here. They're pretty desperate. The bearish aspect is going to be the 1 hour chart. Why? Well, the 1 hour chart is kind of the opposite of the daily chart. And what do I mean by that? But what do I mean by that? The MACD in the 1 hour chart, you can see also now, in this case, the opposite, about to flip bearish, right? It's currently bullish, making lower highs, and it's on the verge of flipping bearish. That's not good. We have the RSI starting to make a little bit of a divergence, right? A bearish divergence, a little bit, not crazy yet, but a little bit of hints of bearish divergence that's coming up over here. As we're going higher, the RSI is kind of starting to go lower. That's a bearish divergence, and it's kind of overbought or very close to overbought territories. Stochastic on the 1 hour was extremely overbought, less overbought now, but obviously because it's less overbought, that means that we had that bearish crossover this morning, and we absolutely did. So, that's not good. RSI on the 1 hour, bearish crossover, BX trender, lower highs, red band. So the point I'm trying to make here is the fact that the short term 1 hour is, despite us arguably going higher, if not at the very least sideways, the momentum, at least from these indicators and what they're showing me, is starting to slow down. It is starting to weaken. That's important to note and understand. What that means to me, at least, is the fact that, because you might be thinking, well, that doesn't make any sense. How is the 1 hour bearish and the daily is bullish? Like what does that even mean? What it means is pretty simple. It means the fact that short term, I would not be surprised to see a pullback. It really would not shock me to see a pullback. Honestly, a bit lower to maybe 208, maybe even a very low 200s, like closer to like 203 again. That would not shock me, like to come back down to these levels, like all the way down here. What that would be though, and luckily, or not luckily, but coincidentally, I guess, is a nice little retest, right? Could be a nice little bullish retest of this downward channel or handle breakout, and it would reset the 1 hour. And the best part is because this would be a pretty quick and would only take a few days, really, right? This, let's just say it starts on Monday, this would be over by Wednesday, probably, honestly, right? Obviously depends on how fast it happens, but if I were to guess, these things on the 1 hour chart, they don't take very long to switch course, right? So once this bearish trend potentially plays out, assuming it does on the 1 hour chart, it wouldn't take very long to get back to being bullish. And the reason it works out with the daily chart is because the daily chart, it's a lot slower of a chart. It can take some of that little punishment. So if we do come down to about 207, let's just say, the daily chart, in my opinion, would be largely unfazed from these indicators I am currently showing, right? At least in theory, it shouldn't be, or it should not be unfazed. So we'll see how that plays out, but that's kind of what I see. Overall, ultimately, daily chart, medium term, let's just say, maybe even long term, but long term would be absolutely a break above 265, a bullish. Medium term though, I think to potentially even come up to retest 265 at some point, maybe a run up to the robotaxi event looks solid. Very short term though, like literally for the next week maybe, there could be a little bit of an issue here on the 1 hour chart, especially considering that the market, if there's another place to reject, it's pretty much right around here for this market to get at least a little bit of a cool off, which would bring Tesla down to those levels, like I said. So for instance, if QQQ does cool off about that 3%, like I mentioned, Tesla with that, its typical beta, maybe 6%, maybe slightly more, right? So for instance, if it comes down to my, level, that would be pretty much right here. Look at that, 6% is about 203. Beautiful. That's pretty much what I would expect if that were to happen. Obviously, we don't know for sure, but I think that is definitely in the cards, and honestly more likely than not, in my honest opinion, at least for now. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing right now, ladies and gentlemen. We did see quite a lot of calls come in on Tesla. Where was it? There was a lot of calls come in on Tesla for, here we go. 11:15, November 15th, 260 calls. A lot of calls came in for that. So clearly people are expecting a run up into the robotaxi event. I can't say I disagree. It's just a matter of, do we get that small pullback, maybe even as early as next week on the 1 hour chart, back down to the low 200s first, or do we just, fly up from here? That's the $1 million question that obviously nobody has the answer to, but definitely want to watch out for that as a potential catalyst and possibility. But all in all, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button, and I'll see you for the next one. Peace.